United we rise. Chapter 1. Zeek walked with his head down, trying to avoid eye contact with the other students laughing and chatting around him. At 17 years old, he still felt like an outsider at his high school. He ate lunch alone, talked to almost no one, and preferred to disappear into his vintage comic books about misunderstood superheroes. In this futuristic world of New Seattle in the year 2045, being different was dangerous. The government had outlawed genetic enhancements, so anyone exhibiting special abilities faced harsh scrutiny. Zeek longed for a sense of community and purpose, but his shy nature isolated him. That afternoon, Zeek stopped by the public library, rather than go straight home after school. He wandered the stacks, trailing his fingers over the book spines. In the graphic novel section, he found a dog-eared copy of X-Men and smiled. He related to these fictional mutants, feared for their powers but trying to do good. Zeek checked out the comic and several science fiction books about telepathy. He had always wished he could read minds. Recently, he sensed strange whispers in his head, though he wrote them off as an overactive imagination. Still, the thought of telepathic connection appealed to his lonely nature. At home, Zeek hid in his room reading, only emerging for a silent dinner with his worried parents. They wished their introverted son would open up and make friends. Zeek could not explain that he was waiting to find the place he truly belonged. He feared he would always be searching. Zeek's telephone rang unexpectedly that evening. When he heard the voice on the line, his heart raced with equal parts hope and dread. Chapter 2. Rena hid her distinctive white hair under the hood of her jacket as she walked briskly through the dark city streets. Curfew for bioenhanced was sundown, but she frequently broke it to aid the others. Tonight her mission was critical. She reached the apartment building, its brick facade crumbling but inconspicuous. Up on the 12th floor, she knocked softly on the dented metal door. It opened to reveal a startled teenage boy holding a cell phone. Rena knew at once that this shy, slouching youth was the one she had been seeking. "Zeek, we need to talk. May I come in?" she asked gently. Despite her petite stature, she exuded confidence and authority. Zeek nodded, bewildered but curious. They sat at his small kitchen table underneath the flickering overhead light. "You're not going crazy," Rena reassured him. "What you're hearing are real people's thoughts." Zeek's eyes widened. "You know about the voices?" "I do, and I know you have gifts, Zeek, ones this society doesn't understand yet." She leaned forward, her expression intense. "I'm here to help you understand them, to embrace them, not fear them. What they call bioenhancements are really the future of human evolution." Zeek soaked this in, stunned. For months he had worried something was wrong with him. But this stranger had answers. She talked about his powers as a wondrous development, rather than a defect. "I want to learn more," he admitted. "I feel so alone and out of place in this world, but maybe—" He hesitated, but sensed he could trust Rena. "Maybe I can find where I belong among others like me," he finished, meeting her eyes for the first time. Rena squeezed his shoulder. "You can, and your gifts can help so many of our kind. Will you join us?" Zeek did not hesitate. A chance to understand himself and be part of a community was everything he had ever wanted. "I'm in," he said. Chapter 3. Agent Max Stone stalked down the sleek corridors of the classified government base known only as the Farm. He nodded briskly at the guards and scientists he passed, stern face unreadable. He had a meeting with his superiors, and he knew the news would not be good. The director's office gleamed with steel furnishings, screens flickering along the walls showing news reports and surveillance feeds. Agent Stone stood at attention. "Reports are pouring in of newly manifested bioenhanced, sir," he reported. "My team has captured several specimens in New Seattle and transported them here, but others eluded surveillance." The gray-haired director frowned, his lined face hard. "The incidents are increasing exponentially. These freaks of science cannot be allowed to roam free. The public would panic over their unnatural abilities." He stood, hands clasped tightly at his back. "The government must take drastic measures to contain this outbreak. Have we made progress on identifying the genetic cause?" Agent Stone hesitated. "Dr. Kaufman believes environmental catalysts are triggering activation of pre-existing mutations. He advocates universal blood testing too." "Nonsense," snapped Director White. "The cause is irrelevant. Our only concern is neutralizing the threat." He paced behind his smooth desk. "The cabinet has approved my proposal. We will establish mandatory registration for all bioenhanced and detention facilities for those who resist." Agent Stone nodded curtly. He felt no sympathy for those who would disrupt the natural order with their unstable powers. He would follow orders and do his duty to protect his country, no matter the cost. Chapter 4. Zeek followed Rena down twisty tunnels that stank of mold and neglect. Dripping pipes crossed the crumbling ceiling overhead. Their flashlights pierced the gloom with thin beams. This hidden world felt foreboding, but Zeek trusted his new mentor's lead. At last they emerged into a cavernous basement space cluttered with old furniture, mattresses, and packing crates. People milled about, their whispered conversations echoing against concrete walls. They eyed Zeek curiously, but parted respectfully for Rena. She led him to a circle of battered couches occupied by the others he would come to know well. Jax, the tall, muscular figure skulking in the corner who rarely spoke. Maya, her delicate features belying her steel core, who offered Zeek a small smile. And Noah, a lanky teen nervously making a coin dance across his knuckles. "Everyone, this is Zeek. He'll be staying with us," Rena announced. After brief introductions, she drew Zeek aside. "You'll be safe here," she said. "We'll help you gain control of your abilities." Sensing his jittery distress, she squeezed his shoulder reassuringly. "It's a lot, I know, but you're not alone. We bioenhanced have to stick together against a world that hates and fears us." Zeek glanced around at the ragtag group. Not one looked whole or healthy, but he sensed their tightly bound community. For the first time, tentative hope sparked within him at the thought he had found where he belonged. Rena showed him to a cluttered room hosting piles of old mattresses. "Get some rest. Your training starts tomorrow." Zeek lay in the dark, listening to the breathing of the others. Their presence soothed his anxieties and loneliness. He had found his new family. Chapter 5. The next morning, Zeek concentrated on moving the rusty can across the floor by the strength of his thoughts alone. Frustrated, he collapsed against the crates behind him. "I'll never get this telekinesis stuff," he complained. Across from him, Noah effortlessly lifted 5 cans at once, stacking them neatly into a pyramid before letting them clatter to the floor again. "You just need to practice," he said kindly. "I know you'll get there." Rena stepped over, arms crossed. "Enough telekinesis for today. Let's see you focus on your primary gift. She tapped her forehead meaningfully. Zeek took a deep breath. He unclenched his mind and tried to open it to the whispers at the edge of his perception. The voices of his new friend's thoughts sounded first. Asterisk Simon, you got this. Zeek asterisk Maya projected supportively. Asterisk should tell him to try harder. Not weak, just untrained asterisk Jax's gruff-mind voice critiqued. Noah's thoughts were anxious but encouraging. Asterisk, he needs more time. Rena should go easier on, asterisk. Stop, please. Zeek cried out, hands pressed to his temples. The impressions overwhelmed him. His friends quieted, looking concerned. I'm okay, he said shakily. It's just a lot right now. Rena nodded with empathy. You'll learn to filter. For now, try reading just one of us at a time. Let's begin with Noah. Noah obligingly cleared his mind, thinking of a simple image, a star flickering against the night sky. Zeek narrowed his focus, blocking out the others. At first, he perceived only shapes and colors. Then suddenly, the vivid picture flashed through his mind. A star, he exclaimed. I saw it. The others whooped and clapped. Zeek laughed, exhilarated. He really was developing powers, not going insane. The voices in his head were real, and soon he would master their messages. Nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 6. Over the next weeks, Zeek's abilities grew swiftly. He learned to isolate and interpret the thoughts around him, even gleaning surface-level impressions from strangers on the street. In crowded areas, he still became overwhelmed, but he was making progress. His telekinetic gifts lagged behind his telepathy, however. While Maya could heal flesh wounds and Noah deftly manipulated objects with his mind, Zeek struggled to budge even a pencil. It takes time to develop new neural pathways, Rena reassured him. Keep practicing those visualization and focus techniques. Zeek also soaked up everything he could about the bioenhanced. He learned they possessed a rare genetic quirk that could be activated by a catalyst. The government likely classified them as dangerous mutations, but Zeek now saw his gifts as beautiful evolutions of human potential. The night of his first mission came sooner than he expected. We're meeting a contact at the Institute who can get us some records, Rena told him. Stay close to Noah and do exactly as I say. She gave him a pointed look. And under no circumstances are you to probe the minds of our contact or any officials, understand? Zeek nodded, nerves and excitement warring within him. He had trained for something like this, but the reality sent his pulse racing. Still, he would not let Rena or the others down. Slipping through drain pipes and side tunnels, they emerged after midnight beside the looming Institute building. Zeek kept watch, reaching out mentally to alert them if anyone approached. But the Institute slumbered, only a bored night guard wandering the halls. At the discreet side door, a nervy man in a white coat greeted them furtively. I have the files, but we must hurry, he whispered. The new registration law passed, they'll hunt you all down. Zeek glimpsed their tense faces in the dim light. The world was changing, and their kind would have to fight back to survive. This was his life now. Chapter 7. Back at the hideout, Zeek watched Rena pore over the records they had obtained. Her eyebrows drew together in concentration as she scanned chemical readouts and clinical notes. This is worse than I realized, she muttered. They're moving beyond just cataloging us, these new experiments. She shook her head, jaw tightening. What is it? Zeek asked. Rena met his eyes. Vivisection, psychotropic manipulation trials. They're treating our people like lab rats. Fury roiled beneath her controlled exterior. There must be something we can do, Zeek said. There is. We strike preemptively at one of their secret labs before they can escalate. If we expose what they're doing, public sympathy could shift to protect our rights. She outlined an audacious plan: infiltrate a lab outside New Seattle, gather evidence, rescue prisoners, and detonate an EMP to destroy their systems. We'll need the whole team, Rena said. Maya's medical expertise, Noah's telekinesis for breaking in, Jack's for any necessary muscle, and your telepathy to alert us if guards approach. Zeke's mouth went dry at the huge responsibility, but he nodded. I won't let you down. Rena grasped his shoulder. I know you've come so far, Zeek. Your gifts make you the most valuable player on this mission. Pride swelled in Zeke's chest. He had found his purpose. With Rena's guidance and the team at his side, he could truly make a difference for his kind. Together, they would change the world or die trying. Chapter 8. Agent Stone scowled at the report in his hands. 6 more suspected bioenhanced escaped custody in New Seattle last night. Crushing the paper, he turned on his informant. Explain yourself, Doctor. Dr. Kaufman wilted under the agent's icy glare. Our registration forces are stretched thin, sir. These rogues have help hiding their kind from authorities. You mean to tell me a handful of freaks are evading the full force of this agency? Stone advanced until the doctor retreated against the wall. Your medical staff assured me those containment collars would suppress their abilities. Teach they do. Kaufman sputtered. But these rebels seem to have found a way to remove them. My engineers are working on more secure designs, I assure you. Stone sneered. See that they do. He whirled, pacing the polished floor. These living weapons cannot remain free. Their chaotic powers would bring society crashing down. He paused, new calculations turning behind his eyes. Perhaps we can turn their nonsense nobility against them, lure them into a trap under the pretense of rescuing their own. Yes, he decided, it was time to go on the offensive. He would use Kaufman's flawed research against the bioenhanced by creating a crisis only they could answer and be waiting when they did. Stone turned back to the doctor, who squirmed nervously. This incident report gives the location of last night's escape, an isolated clinic barely used since the pandemic. I believe it's time we stage a crisis there that not even rogue weapons can ignore. Kaufman paled but nodded rapidly. Of course, whatever you need. Stone smiled coldly before sweeping from the office. The time had come to exterminate the mutant menace for good. Chapter 9. The night chosen for their infiltration came stormy and moonless, a perfect cover for their illegal activities. Zeek pulled up his hood against the chill drizzle as the team gathered in the shadows of an alley across from the facility. Rena gave them final instructions, breath fogging in the cold air. Noah, be ready to disable security systems, so we can slip in undetected. Maya, you're our medic if anyone gets hurt. Jax, take out any guards quickly and silently. She turned to Zeek. Scan constantly for hostile minds and warn us of incoming threats. With your telepathy guiding us, I know we can succeed. She squeezed his shoulder, smiling with confidence in him. It steadied his rattled nerves. Rena turned serious. Stick to the plan, get in, get evidence, get out, but do what it takes to free any prisoners and bring this place down. Her jaw clenched with quiet fury. Zeke's heart swelled with loyalty to this fierce leader and their cause. At her signal, Noah focused his powers. Zeek felt the locking mechanisms in the doors snap open. Jax took point, leading them swiftly through sterile halls. Zeke's mind brushed cautiously against the shadowy thoughts of sleeping staff. In the first holding room, he gasped at the cruel confinement tanks. In the next, Rena covertly snapped images of restraint tables and medical equipment. Zeke's stomach turned at the intentions layered in this place: a monitor, control, break, exploit. Guards approached, bleary with sleep but growing alert. Someone's coming, Zeek warned. Maya erected a shimmering shield across the door while Jax moved to intercept. Zeek listened for more incoming threats, his gifts making him central to their safety. Their lives depended on him mastering his unstable powers tonight. The pressure electrified him. Rena squeezed his shoulder, nodding in approval as he stayed vigilant. We've got enough evidence, let's keep moving. Zeek focused everything on guiding them through the shadows toward their final goal, taking down this awful place once and for all. Chapter 10. Alarms blared suddenly, shocking after the stealthy silence. They triggered the security prematurely, Rena said. Zeek, can you get us out? Zeek froze up. The shrill alarms disoriented him, making it hard to focus on the personnel rushing through the facility. I'm not sure it's too much input, he stammered. He was failing them. Rena grasped his shoulders, staring intensely into his overwhelmed eyes. I know it's chaotic, but you can do this. I believe in you, Zeek. Take a breath, block everything else out. He nodded jerkily, trying to calm his spiking anxiety. He had to rise to the occasion, or they would be captured or killed. Closing his eyes, Zeek visualized walls sealing his mind, leaving a narrow access point he could control. The impressions softened to a manageable level. He sensed a cluster of guards approaching from the right. Go left, that way's clearer, he directed. The team moved smoothly where he guided them. Zeek built momentum, funneling all his energy into his gifts. He became their early warning system, their guide, their shield. Checkpoint ahead, Zeek warned. Rena nodded, phasing through the approaching wall to scout the route. Zeek tracked her progress through the minds of the guards. He warned when one turned unexpectedly in her direction, allowing her to duck unseen into a side room. I've got the route, Rena reported, slipping back to them. Stay close. Noah manipulated door locks ahead while Maya shielded their escape. They were nearly out when pounding boots approached, cutting off their exit. Take cover, Zeek yelled. In the nick of time, they hid themselves behind industrial shelving just before a strike team charged past toward the containment breach. Zeek sagged in relief. Once the way was clear, they moved quickly for the rendezvous point. Outside, Rena clapped Zeek on the back. You got us out of there, I knew you could do it. Zeek stood taller, confidence surging through him. When it mattered most, he had tapped the power within him. He was one of them now, a soldier for their cause, capable and strong. Tonight he had proven his worth. Chapter 11. The getaway was going perfectly until it all went wrong. They were nearing the city border, the rendezvous vehicle in sight, when blinding lights pinned them in place. A voice boomed out, "Bioenhanced rebels, stand down, you're surrounded." Rena hissed in fury and dismay. "It's a trap." Squinting against the glare, Zeek made out the black forms of armored soldiers, weapons leveled. How had they known? Agent Stone emerged from the shadows. "Your crusade ends tonight. If you come quietly, we may go easy on the survivors." His smile was cold and vicious. Rena stepped forward defiantly. "We'll never surrender to be tortured and enslaved." "Then this will end only one way." Stone raised a hand. Zeek shouted a warning as the soldiers opened fire. Chaos erupted. Noah threw up a wavering barrier, straining to deflect the barrage. Return fire from Jax downed a few soldiers, but they were vastly outnumbered. Maya cried out as a blast clipped her shoulder. Zeek rushed to support her weight while she attempted to stem the bleeding, teeth gritted against the pain. Rena faced off fiercely with Stone, phasing through his blows. But his strikes came dangerously close to connecting. "We have to retreat," Rena shouted. "Get ready to run." They would have to abandon the vehicle and escape on foot. As Noah's shield began to buckle, Zeek knew with sinking certainty that not all of them would escape this trap. But failure was not an option. He would gladly give his life if it meant the dream lived on. Rena met his eyes, nodding slightly. Zeek tensed, waiting for her signal. Their only chance was to stand together. Chapter 12. "Now!" Rena yelled. Noah released the shield in a concussive burst, knocking back the nearest soldiers. Supporting the stumbling Maya, Zeek ran for the dark tree line. The soldiers swiftly recovered, shouts and gunfire chasing them. Zeek helped Maya over the rugged ground, glancing back desperately. They weren't moving fast enough. Then searing pain tore through his leg as a blast grazed his calf. He cried out, crashing down and pulling Maya with him. Through blurring vision, he saw the soldiers closing in. This was it. He had failed them all. Rena suddenly hurtled from the darkness back toward their pursuers. Zeek sensed her intending to buy them time to escape. But traveling alone into that hail of fire, she stood no chance. "No!" Zeek screamed hoarsely. And abruptly, everything slowed. Zeek sensed surprise and confusion from the soldiers as they seemed to move in slow motion through molasses. What was happening? Shouting nearby refocused him. Rena beckoned urgently. "Zeek, how are you?" Comprehension dawned on her face. "Help me get the others, hurry." Somehow, he had tapped into a new power to warp time. Zeek did not question his sudden gift, just levered Maya to her feet, gritting through his own pain. Together, they limped to where Rena supported the badly bleeding Jax and exhausted Noah. In the protective temporal bubble, they dragged themselves far enough to temporarily hide and treat their wounds. When Zeek finally released the power, crashing waves of blackness dragged him under. But they had miraculously survived. His awakening abilities had saved them all. Chapter 13. Zeek floated slowly back to consciousness. He became aware of his stiff, bandaged body and soft bed beneath him. Cracking open his eyes, he recognized the spare room in Rena's underground apartment. Morning light filtered through grimy windows. Rena sat vigil in a chair beside him. At his stirring, relief broke across her weary face. "You did it, Zeek," she said softly. "You've saved us all." Over the next days as he recovered, she explained how Agent Stone had orchestrated the trap, leaking information to lure them in. But they had survived and struck an even more damaging blow by exposing the government's illegal experiments. "Public opinion is shifting," Rena told him. "More see us as victims now that the truth is out." But when she received a coded transmission asking for help with another lab liberation, Zeek knew their fight was far from over. Once Zeek could walk, they ventured at night to the remote research lab. Maya stayed behind to continue nursing Jax. Zeek was glad to have Noah's steadying presence nearby during the tense infiltrate. Finding only a skeleton staff, they moved swiftly to download data and set their explosives. In the holding cells, they found 6 bioenhanced prisoners trapped in restraint collars. One girl wept in relief as Rena removed her collar. "Thank you for freeing us," she sobbed, throwing her arms around the older woman. "They did such horrible tests." She broke off with a shudder. Rena's jaw tensed, fury in her eyes. "No more. We're getting you all out of here." They led the group safely away just before the facility erupted in flame behind them. Zeek met Rena's gaze as sirens split the night. He knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 14. In the aftermath, public opinion swayed steadily in the bioenhanced's favor, much as Rena hoped. People were outraged, learning the extent of the government's lies and mistreatment. Docile cooperation gave way to protests and unrest. Politicians pushed a bill for bioenhanced rights and redress, banning involuntary experimentation and registries. Rena's contacts confirmed the law had enough votes to pass. For the first time, Zeek dared hope for a future of freedom and acceptance. A weight had lifted from their underground community. They no longer had to live in fear, plotting their next dangerous mission. "Your courage changed everything," Rena told him proudly. "We're entering a new age." There was still hesitation and prejudice, but progress was undeniable. Zeek was approached discreetly with offers to teach children about managing their emerging gifts. He wondered if one day there could be schools and training facilities run by their own kind openly. Zeek sat on the apartment roof one evening, watching the sun set in streaks of orange and pink. For the first time in years, he sensed true peace was possible. "Mind if I join you?" Rena asked from the stairwell. Zeek hatted the spot beside him. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, gazing toward the horizon. Rena followed his line of sight. "It is. We get to see so many more sunsets now without needing to hide." Zeek turned to her. "Thank you for everything. I never could have imagined having a life like this." Rena bumped his shoulder affectionately. "You earned it. We've got a long road still ahead, but we'll walk it together." They sat in contented silence as the day darkened to night. A warm certainty settled in Zeek's chest that he had found the place he belonged. The future shone bright with hope. Chapter 15. Director White scowled as the Bioenhanced Rights and Redress Act passed by overwhelming majority. After so many setbacks and failures, health issues had forced his resignation. He loathed leaving on such an ignominious note. At the celebration party, Zeek found Rena on the balcony, lost in thought. "I know that look," he said. "What's worrying you?" Rena sighed. "Things are better, but not fixed. Prejudice doesn't disappear overnight." Zeek nodded solemnly. "So what comes next?" Rena met his eyes. "The government wants to negotiate. I think we have to try for real cooperation, now that views are shifting." Zeek leaned on the railing, considering. He too wanted lasting change. Their methods had been extreme out of necessity before. But moving forward, negotiation might achieve more. "Not everyone agrees with me," Rena admitted. "Some refuse to ever trust the authorities, but will more violence, and secrets really lead to healing?" Zeek turned toward her. "You've led us through the darkness. Now guide us into the light. We'll follow where you believe is right." Rena clasped his shoulder, expression thoughtful. "I'll arrange a meeting, but we come to the table as equals with our advisors, not surrendering sole control." Zeke knew compromise would not be easy for either side. But if they focused on wisdom and empathy for all, he trusted Rena could navigate them on a better path. The negotiations were tedious, but peace held. And they secured fair representation and oversight of bioenhanced related policies. There was hope if both groups were willing. After the celebratory toast, Rena found Zeek. "Here's to the future," she said warmly. "To walking together," Zeek replied. And he knew as long as they did, a brighter world was possible. Chapter 16. A year passed in relative cooperation, but anti-bioenhanced sentiments persisted. Agent Stone had escaped justice, claiming he acted on government orders. In the absence of his task force, vigilante hate groups arose. There were those like Minister Galt who condemned bioenhanced as unnatural affronts needing to be wiped out. Rena frowned over the news coverage. "Public opinion is shifting again while Galt fans the flames," she worried. "More incidents could turn the tide back against us." Privately, Zeek agreed conflict seemed inevitable if attitudes kept worsening. Then late one night, Rena burst into his room, expression grim. "There's been an attack. Galt supporters firebombed a bioenhanced youth hostel." Zeek sat upright, appalled. "Were there?" "A few injuries, no deaths," she assured him. "But it will only escalate." Over the following weeks, violence flared on both sides. Rena continuously negotiated for restraint, but passions ran too high. News showed chaotic protests and clashes. "Is this what we fought for?" Zeek asked sorrowfully after a teen was gravely injured, defending her home from vandals. "Things seem to finally be getting better." Rena's face was etched with sadness and fatigue. "I know, but we can't give up hope." Still, the days toward conflict ticked inexorably onward. A late-night council at Rena's sanctuary home ended in explosive disagreement about how to respond. Maya pushed for a preemptive show of strength to deter attackers. Noel wanted to lay low and protect their community. Others argued bitterly, growing heated. Zeek stayed close to Rena, sensing the strain on her as she pleaded for nonviolence. He was ready to back her lead despite sharing the other's anger. When she left in frustration, Zeek followed her to the moonlit balcony. "Things will get better again," he offered gently. Rena just shook her head wearily. "I hope we're strong enough to withstand what's coming." Under the uncaring stars, Zeek worried too. Could any choice prevent the onrushing disaster as tensions reached the breaking point? Chapter 17. The downtown plaza was a war zone. Rena's people clashed fiercely with the anti-bioenhanced extremists, though she had pled for today's rally to remain peaceful. Both sides had powered members and weapons now. Zeek helped evacuate civilians from the area. But when a young girl was trapped near the central fountain with extremists closing in, he had to act. Zeek slowed time around a chunk of concrete, launching it at their legs to drive them back. Scooping up the crying child, he returned her to her panicked mother. "Do we get involved?" Zeek asked Rena, where she coordinated care for the injured. She hesitated only a moment before hardening her expression. "Hold them off and give people time to escape, but no lethal force." The fighting raged violently, both sides convinced of their righteousness. Zeek stayed at Rena's side, stopping debris flung their way and shielding fleeing families. But each clash drove the wedge deeper. A blast exploded outward as a powered extremist was struck down. Zeek turned in time to see a small figure thrown by the shockwave. He reached out desperately to slow her fall just before she would have hit the ground. The battered girl stared up at him, tears streaking her dust-coated cheeks. "Stop fighting, please," she pleaded in a quavering voice. Zeek looked around, truly seeing the pain and damage inflicted on all sides. What were they thinking? Neither would ever force the other to yield like this. There had to be a better way. Catching Rena's eye, Zeek saw she had come to the same conclusion. The battle still raged fiercely, but the bitterness of violence had finally crystallized into perfect clarity for them both. This could not go on. And it had to end before more innocents paid the price. Chapter 18. Zeek and Rena regrouped their people, compelling an end to the fruitless skirmishing. Shaken and weary, they withdrew to redirect their approach before the situation could reignite. Back at the sanctuary house, Zeek found Rena staring emptily over the city lights. He did not need telepathy to sense her bone-deep exhaustion and disillusionment. "I was so sure we could change things peacefully," she said hollowly. That trying to understand each other would be enough. She dropped her head into her hands. "What a fool I've been." Zeek touched her shoulder. "We only wanted a world united in wisdom and empathy, but some souls take longer to illuminate." Rena turned to him, eyes shadowed and worn. "I led us down this path strewn with pain when I should have seen the pitfalls, and now people are suffering for it." "You led us out of darkness and gave us hope," Zeek countered gently. "Hold on to that. A long night doesn't negate the promise of dawn." Rena searched his face and finally nodded wearily. "Wisdom like yours is what we need now. Will you stand by me as we try to make this right?" Zeek drew himself up. Until the end. In the days that followed, Zeek saw the well of untapped gifts within himself and within all people. If they could inspire the nation to embrace connection instead of division, real change was possible. At a bleak meeting, he surprised everyone by proposing they led public meditation circles, bringing bioenhanced and fearful citizens together through spiritual unity. Focus on empathy would plant seeds of change. Rena smiled, the first light returning to her eyes. This could work, remind people we aren't so different. She squeezed his shoulder warmly. "Brilliant, Zeek." And Zeek understood his purpose now was guiding people's hearts and minds bioenhanced and otherwise toward the light within us all. Chapter 19. The meditation circles started small, just a handful attending. But they grew steadily as word spread. Under Zeek's gentle guidance, walls between once hostile citizens softened. He led them through breathing exercises and visualizations promoting empathy. At first, the groups sat wary and separate. But in the closing reflections, Zeek suggested, turn to your neighbors, see their shared humanity, and offer blessings of loving kindness. Hesitantly, the bioenhanced and fearful citizens did so. Tears and hesitant smiles were exchanged. Barriers continued to erode each week as the practice spread. You're really making an impact, Rena told Zeek proudly. Prejudice can't survive when people truly connect heart to heart. But a bomb threat disrupted one circle before it could begin. Zeek rushed to where volunteers in protective gear checked for explosives. Let me help, he urged. The bomb squad leader hesitated. Scan the perimeter psychically and steer clear if you sense anything dangerous. An hour later, the building was declared clear. Zeek mentally swept the rooms before the unsettled group entered for their weekly meditation. Their relief at completing this simple act of harmony was palpable. Fear remained, but bonds between them were strengthening. Truth threatened that progress reaffirmed they were on the right path. Darkness would pass. When a former extremist spoke up to thank the bioenhanced for persisting despite attacks, Zeek met Rena's eyes. Her smile said it all. They would hold on to their vision of wisdom and stay the course. The only possible road was understanding, and their moral beacon would guide others there. Chapter 20. On his birthday, Zeek marveled at the shy, aimless boy he had been just a few years ago. So much had changed since his gifts emerged, and Rena showed him a higher purpose. Now crowds hung on his compassionate words at rallies, unified by his calm presence. He advised leaders on integrating bioenhanced equality and led chapters nationally. Humble still, Zeek focused not on fame, but on the wisdom touched in each heart. With Rena, he had created programs for youth that nurtured gifts and built connections. Zeek knew if they could guide the next generation, true healing would come. When threats came or dissenters challenged him publicly, Zeek did not retaliate in anger. He spoke to the fear poisoning their spirit and responded with loving compassion. Darkness, he knew, could not persist under light shone clear and unwavering. Where once Zeek hid from a world he did not understand, now he moved through it open-hearted, embracing all. He'd grown into a leader others followed through crisis into peace. And he hoped his life might reflect the truth that there were no divisions between people that love could not bridge. Old friends honored him at the birthday celebration, praising his courage and vision. But Zeek brushed aside accolades, crediting those he worked alongside. We rise together, he said simply. He moved among the crowd, offering blessings and encouragement. So much struggle yet remained, but Zeek had faith. Their extended family gave him hope. And step by step, they would walk forward into the light. Chapter 21. On the anniversary of the unrest, Zeek prepared to address the nation live with a message of hope and unity. As camera crews bustled, his communication advisor Isaac reviewed talking points. Emphasize how far we've come, Isaac said. Zeek nodded, but his speech would come straight from the heart. Director Kaufman, once a bioenhanced foe, approached Zeek. Hardliners will be watching closely, he warned. This is a chance to sway opinion by showing restraint and compassion. Only light overcomes darkness, Zeek replied simply. Kaufman clapped his shoulder in support. Zeek stepped on stage before a hushed crowd of bioenhanced and non-enhanced alike. He connected them for a moment of silence before speaking. "A year ago, humanity's fear drove us apart," he began gently. "Darkness hid our shared nature, but light comes slowly, then floods unchanged hearts. We have seen the truth that there are no divisions between people that love cannot bridge." Murmurs of agreement rippled. He went on more passionately. "Once we sought only survival, but now we know a greater purpose. Our gifts help us reshape the future through compassion, and we move forward together, no longer bound by fear." Nods and smiles. He was reaching them. "The road continues, but we walk it with hope. Our trials taught that only wisdom and empathy heal." Zeek raised his eyes to the cameras. "Those still gripped by hatred and fear are not our enemies. Their hearts need light, and we must be patient lamps. A new era dawns if we stand united in justice and love." Across studios and homes, his solemn compassion moved hearts. Prejudice could not withstand such wisdom and humanity. For the first time, all people saw bioenhanced differences as beautiful possibilities. A lasting chance for unity had come at last. Chapter 22. In the years that followed, bioenhanced integration changed society for the better. Their collaboration healed divisions until enhanced abilities were celebrated, not feared. The meditation circles continued, even as crowds sometimes exceeded venue capacity. Every day more souls opened to connection. Of course, struggles persisted, but focused on growth and cooperation now. With compassion and commitment, what had seemed impossible was achieved. Noah's fledgling school for young bioenhanced became a nationwide training program that Zeek supported wholeheartedly. Children like the scared girl he had saved at the plaza battle were now nurturing their gifts in the open. Even Minister Galt softened his views after working alongside enhanced advisors and seeing their contributions firsthand. He pushed for legal protections where once he condemned them. At times, Zeek grew tired, bearing the weight of so many hopes. But Rena's wisdom and humor buoyed him. And when his old telepathy mentor came out of hiding to join their work, Zeek found new strength. On the night the president signed a Biosignature Protection Act into law, Zeek watched from the cheering crowd. He reached his awareness out over the city, once a fearful place of hiding, now illuminated with promise. Zeek's shy younger self never could have imagined living to see such a changed world. But step by step, together, they had brought the dream into reality through faith in the goodness within all people. Their journey continued, but they walked it now with light and hope. The end.